I've made some progress, and I feel like in the spots where I haven't made progress, I've definitely got put on the right track. It took a couple things. So last time I was on your podcast, I was sitting in my puppy room with my pregnant female, an Aranye daughter that I had bought as an adult and bred, and she was huge. She had 9 puppies, and she's a pretty nice dog. I still have her. She's retired now, and she'll live her life here because of such a great temperament, and she's still a good guard dog, and I have all the chickens loose, and she's good with them. But after I had that litter, I had people. This is the only time I did it. I invited people over to my house to look at my dogs and pick the dogs. And I had some impressive dogs, like they were big and big, bully, muscular dogs. But people would come and it's not what they would look for, you know? Like they would look at other things. They would look at the flaws before the good stuff. One person did, and they knew what they were looking at, and they're like, hey, I need a dog for this. We go hiking. I have a lot of free time. They're like, I'm still young and retired, so these next 8 years, like, I want to be super active. And they told me what they were looking for. It sounded like they read the standard to me. Like, it was good. They're like, I need a 24-inch dog that's muscular, that can do this and that, and movement. And I'm like, oh, wow, well, yeah, I know this dog has weak pasterns, but, you know, it's super wide, big bully head. It's a little high in the rear. Its angulation isn't too bad, but it's high in the rear. Like, yeah, but he probably can't do what I want him to do. I'm like, yeah, look at the mom. And look at the mom. He's like, oh, yeah, the mom's good, but he's like, I can't take a chance at. He turns out like the dad. And I'm like, okay, well, I understand. And so they left, and they drove all the way from Washington. I don't know what it was, like 9 hours. Like, they live on some island where they took a ferry. And I said, hey, you're going back up to Washington. We'll stop at this breeder's house. They got puppies right now, and it's a little closer. And they did. They actually bought a dog from that breeder. I just sent them that way. And I bred that dog one more time, the big one, that looked really good, always got tons of attention when I had him in the truck or when I had him. And a lot of attention. I bred him one more time. And I didn't get all the good stuff from him. I didn't get big, bully, muscular dogs with huge heads. All I got was the flaws. And it was tough because I got the height, but I didn't get the wideness. And I scratched my head a little bit. And I didn't really know. And so I had that always in the back of my mind. And then on Instagram, someone commented on one of my pictures. They're like, do you live on such and such road? And I'm like, okay, wow, this guy just knows what road I live on. He must be local. Well, it was actually a neighbor of mine who used to breed Alapahas and American Bulldogs on the standard side. And he was telling me about, he lived a couple miles up the road before when he was raising dogs. And he told me about his setup. He had 17 litters in so many years and the type of dogs he would breed. And he would do protection work and a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Come over. And I invited him over. He lived just up the road, probably like 3 miles. And he came up, and we had super short conversations. And he told me just a few things that I remembered, a few lines he said. You know, he's told me, hey, you gotta know when to hold them and when to fold them. And he told me which dogs he liked and which dogs he didn't like. And it was similar to what that customer, this guy knew exactly what he was looking for. And, I mean, I had a lot of dogs at the time. I had 9 dogs, and he liked some of them and didn't like some of the other ones. So the ones he didn't like were the big, muscular, bully type. They did have some weak pasterns, and they weren't, like, super correct. But my more athletic ones were all correct, and they still had the bully type. And he's like, hey, these 2 dogs right here, these are your best dogs. You should breed them. And I'm like, I don't know. You know, they're half siblings. I got to think about it. And he left, and I started thinking about it. And I went online more and looked at a bunch of dogs. And I started getting more into wanting the clean, correct structure. Like, I knew what structure was, and I knew how things had to be in conformation. And I said, he's got this and he's got that, and my other dog's got this. It's not the same flaws. I'll put them together and I'll select the best. Well, selecting at 8 weeks, it doesn't really show you everything. You got a good hunch of what you might get or what you might not. But unless you know those pedigrees and you've seen the litter mates of all the parents, it's not really going to tell you what's in your genetic pool. And I did, and that's when I decided I'm cutting my yard in half. Mm-hmm. I cut my yard in half, and I kept some of my better dogs, and then I produced dogs out of them. And just kept doing, what the breeder who lived up the street told me. He's like, hey, man, keep up on the training with all your dogs. Make sure they're good dogs. Know the temperaments. That way, if you need a pet, home them because they don't turn out for breeding. At least you can give them to somebody or sell them to somebody, and it won't be difficult. They won't have any behavior issues. And again, what he told me, know when to hold them and know when to fold them. So I did that for a few years, and I've seen a lot of improvements in my yard. I can't tolerate weak pasterns anymore. It's just a pet peeve. Flaws that are multiple parts, for example, like a rear end with angulation, it's just a lot of issues. You have the angulation for the rear. It could be high rear, the hocks, everything. So when you have a bad rear, there's just a lot of moving parts that make it more difficult for something to breed out. So I don't really like to keep or breed those dogs either. And right now it's been a few generations since I started. And I feel like I'm on the right track. I've kept stuff off of my own stock. Mostly I'm keeping females and breeding the outside males. But a lot of those outside males also have the same blood I have. Like, for example, I bought one female, but she was off of my brood bitch's sister. And that dog up in Portland is an excellent producer. Everything she produces looks about the same. It's like you can tell. If somebody messaged me and said, "Hey, I got this dog," I'm like, "Oh, I know where that dog comes from." Like it's half sisters to my dog. I can tell just by looking at it. So that put me on in a situation where I wanted better looking dogs with less flaws. And what was next was obviously performance. Like, I need some more athleticism. That's one of the easiest ways. Like, if your dog's pretty athletic, not overdone bully, you're going to have an easier time picking. And I have a dog right now. He's about 20 months old, and his name is Peso. He is the son of Logic, a dog that was in California. Now he's in Canada. And that dog turned out to be a big dog, but in a different way. He's like 24 inches tall, like 114, maybe 115 pounds right now. And I have him not too underweight, but I don't want him to be fat right now. So I can see his waist, but not really his ribs. He's in a good shape right now. And that boy's athletic. Like, I let him out of the 20 by 20 kennels in the morning, and he'll run all the way around the property where I have mowed. The area where I have mowed is mostly where we hang out. Like, the property goes on past where I mow, but he'll just run all the way across that. It's like a whole acre and a half. And he has some prey drive as far as flirt pole, rope swing, tug of war. A game of tug is awesome. And but I have a bunch of loose chickens. We're also breeding chickens. That's a whole other thing I don't want to get into. But I got probably about 20 stags and pullets that just hang out in the yard in the morning and in the evening, just looking for worms and bugs to eat. and the dogs will run probably 10 feet from the young chickens, and they just stay there. They're used to them. They don't run from them, and the dogs really don't bother them. So that dog is pretty nice. There's a few things I want to improve on him, but I learned a lot from just the genetic side of things. Like, first I got into the color genetics. I do have some colored dogs. And learning about the color genetics is what is a dominant trait and what's a recessive trait. For example, brindle is dominant, and things like dilutes and like chocolate colors, those are recessive. And I learned them, and I learned to read the genetic reports from like Embark, so I could like predict what colors a litter would have. And I started thinking about temperament and throwbacks and other things like that were important, that I'm like, hey, I wonder which of these temperaments is also recessive, which are dominant. And that took me to the Punnett square. And just, Punnett square is a good way to like see and predict like colors and predict other stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that you just can't predict. For example, temperaments like more outgoing dogs when they're puppies is important to know, is important to tell your customers and everything when you sell them a pup. But for me, to keep a dog is difficult. When you buy a dog at 8 weeks, you take all the info as far as the parents. It's the best thing is to just look at the whole litter. But for me these days, when I keep a dog, I like to keep 2 or 3 of them. 2 or 3 out of the litter, just so I can pick and really know, because picking at 8 weeks is tough. But if you get like 9 months to keep them at your house, or better, co-own them, you can figure out which is going to be the best for your breeding program. And that's just another thing I'm doing, is I'm usually keeping one at my house and one with an uncle or one with a cousin. And it's been working out, especially with litters of like 6 or 7, when you really can't decide. And I do that, and it sounds pretty obvious, but it wasn't something I was doing before. I was just looking at the pup and I'm like, oh, this is the one. It has to be the one. And always keeping up on training in case they're not the one. I can pet home them, because throwbacks do happen. You, like I said, you get dogs that look like the dogs you have, but they don't have all the good stuff, and you get some of the flaws.
Right.
Yeah. So just I'm looking at pedigree, especially when you bring in a dog from an outside kennel or some outside blood, which is something you pretty much have to do, even if you know it. My favorite thing to do, my rule of thumb is, it's pretty simple. Look at the dog in front of you, and you gotta like the dog, and then you look at the pedigree, and it has to look and it has to match up. You don't want these flukes where the dog in front of you is just great and the pedigree is kind of unknown or iffy. The dogs in the pedigree, maybe the parents or the grandparents don't look like the dog in front of you. And I've done that, and I've done breedings where that has happened. And I've had an even split where 2 of the puppies looked like the dog in front of me, and 2 of the puppies looked like the pedigree. Now, I was able to keep the dogs I liked. I just got lucky, I believe. But nothing more ever came after that. I never bred those dogs after. I was just it was just too shaky. I told myself, I have these 2 other females I could breed that is a little more sure. I'm not going to breed this one because of the pedigree. And the same with the other one I kept. It was a male. I did breed that one, but I didn't keep anything off of that. And especially when you get something that's inbred or line bred, those genes are much stronger. So if it's inbred in a way where you're not completely sure, or it's not the direction you want to go, those genes are going to be stronger, and they might dominate your genes, especially if yours aren't inbred or the pedigree stacked in a way where the dogs are going to be a certain way as far as athleticism or type. And it makes things tricky, and those were some of the things I ran across that made it difficult for me in the last 10 years where I've been breeding. And I'm not gonna lie, before American Bulldogs, I had some pit bulls, and I bought those a couple years before I got the American Bulldogs, before I found out it wasn't exactly for me. But I bought those, and I looked at them as pups with the intention of breeding them.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I could tell you for sure, back then, I did not know what the word confirmation meant.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about inbreeding, line breeding, inbreeding depression. I didn't know about genetics or a lot of things. And I learned it just by being pretty much obsessed with dogs and learning about dogs, finding books, videos on YouTube a little later, and talking to people. And I've just been learning mostly that way. Talking to people has been one of the best ways. If you can get someone who knows a lot to talk to you. And it's helped me go through some of the hurdles as a breeder, because, you know, I'm out here. I'm not near a big city. I'm like 4 hours from the international airport from Portland. And there's not really dog shows, much less people in my breed. There's a couple that's how I got into the breed. Just ran into someone and I got some dogs from them, and I was pretty happy. And the dogs look great. But things when you start out is, as far as the environment and nutrition and things like that, it really makes a difference. Right now, I switched my dogs slowly to what I thought was a better food.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked for two of my females. One female, one male. It did not work. It had negative effects. So now I'm switching back to the food I was at first. And I've been almost 2 weeks back to the food I was at first, and it's not looking any better. So it's little things like that I'm still a little lost on that so far. But I have a big folder where I keep notes of stuff like this. Like at first it was like with breeding, like, hey, I bred her on this day, she came to heat this day, and the pups were born this day, and then I keep deworming and shot records. That's how it started with my big folder and my notes. But it's going to every little detail to, how certain pups reacted when I introduced them to the big dogs, how pups reacted the first time I took them on walks, how adults reacted the first time I tried to play a game of tug, which ones had like the prey drive or ball drive, and which ones are fine with chickens and which ones I kind of got to watch. Because I do have one dog where she knows she's not supposed to chase the chickens. But if I go inside the house and I'm in there for 20 minutes, I might come back to a dead chicken. And I kind of look at that as like, hey, I tell my dogs not to go near the trash because there's some smelly trash that they're kind of interested in. And I leave them alone. The trash can gets tipped over. And that's just some of the things in my notes that I keep track of to help, because sometimes I do have to go back and reference. If I ever get a dog that just has a temperament I don't like, and the mother has been bred before, or the father has been bred before, I can go back and see if they had thrown pups like that before. And it really helps. It keeps me organized. I go to the vet with a litter of pups, and I bring my notes with me, and it just, I'm talking to the vet and I write stuff down, and it helps. I don't know, maybe it gets me a little respect from the vet, because, breeders, a lot of times they see good breeders, but they also see issues that happen from breeders. A lot of times those aren't brought in by the breeders, but they're brought in by other people. And also talking about the vet, I'm x-raying the hips now because that's important to me. I have most of my breeding dogs hips x-rayed. The younger ones, or the ones I've bred more recently. I do have one more dog who's not retired who hasn't had her hips x-rayed, but I might just do that. I'm not sure if I'm going to breed her anymore. But the reason I do x-rays and not like the pen hip or anything is because I'll do x-rays at maybe a year and a half old, and it's got to look really good. And if it doesn't look excellent, or it looks iffy, or I look at the vet and the vet doesn't really know what to say before he says, "Oh yeah, they're fine," then we got to go and do some more stuff later on when they're about 2 years old. Sometimes my dogs do get bred right before 2 years old, especially the males. And talking about hips and stuff like that, there are some things. Some vets won't say it. Some vets will say their studies, and some vets are like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a thing." After looking at everything, is desexing, neutering, spaying dogs before they're mature. I've seen cases where a pup gets like neutered at like 12, 16 weeks old, and it shows like the growth plates don't close at a correct time, and then you have stiff stifles in the back, bad angulation from the way that the dogs grow, and they have a certain look to them. If you see it a few times, maybe on some Google images, you're out in public and you look at a dog that you recognize the breed type, and it looks a little off from the way the legs look, maybe a little longer, less bone density. You can see they're a little taller, and a lot of times hips are bad and knees get ripped from just the angulation and the way they look. And that's something I'm putting in my contracts. Like, dogs aren't to get spayed or neutered until they're at least a year old, or all the health guarantee goes out the window, because I usually keep one of those till 2 years old for the health guarantees. And it's just something that's a shame. It's nothing I can prove, but there's some studies done. There's also another study done that I find interesting, that dogs that get antibiotics, especially heavy doses of antibiotics, before they're 6 months old, also have, I can't remember exactly how it was quoted. Maybe it was elasticity issues with, not joints, but tendons. With tendons, and those would tend to rip also. So there's stuff that's out there. It's written, but it's not super well known or common, and that's stuff that can affect us all, because if dogs need antibiotics, they need antibiotics, especially if they're young, but it's also something to keep in mind. And we don't want to have those bad experiences. I've had some experiences with puppies where it makes you almost not want to breed anymore. It really puts you down. It takes a little while to kind of forget those bad experiences, because I love these dogs and I want these dogs to do good. And yeah, maybe I might put out 30 or 40 excellent good dogs, but that one dog, it's still an issue. It's still tough. It's still tough on people. So just learning a little bit here and there about everything is really, I think it has helped me stop some things and prevent a lot of things that could go bad. But the mostly thing I'm focusing on now is having bully dogs that can perform, that can breathe well. And one thing I've noticed is the biggest issue with American Bulldogs and their breathing is the roof of their mouth, their palates, is too big for the dog. And I stay away from that the best I can. And just keep good breathing dogs, medium-sized muzzles. I do keep a little, 2 dogs that have shorter muzzles than that. And their breathing is pretty good, but you can tell the breathing isn't obstructed. Like, yeah, they breathe heavy when they play, but it's not like an obstructed breathing. Like you can hear the breaths coming in and out. It doesn't sound like something is opening and closing when they breathe. Mm-hmm. So that's important to me. Rear angulation is important because it just looks funny when it doesn't. And you don't want your dog to get hurt. If they got that angulation and they're athletic, they can rip or tear something, and that's not good either. And then the fronts, I like the really strong pasterns with tight, straight feet. I'm not sure if it's just a coincidence or it's something I'm noticing. Females are more likely to have like the tighter, cleaner feet than the males, but I really haven't seen enough where I could see. Like even some of my females, like I rank them in order on their traits from like 1 to 4, and even the 4th one has like slightly better feet than like my first male. So I'm not sure, but it's still something I'm working on with my males. I don't keep a lot of males. I have 1 adult male, 1 young male, and then the rest are on co-owns. I mostly keep the females as a breeding strategy because I can go to outside males if I like the male and I trust the person and it meets all my other requirements. So that's what I'm trying to do. I like a little bit of I like a dog that can play tug or that has that drive for the flirt pole, or my favorite is the spring pole. I tie the swing from the tree, and I let them out the cage, and they go straight for the swing, and they work themselves out. And when they're done, and then they play a little bit, and then I can do other things. I can clean up their kennels while they exercise themselves pretty much, and it's super convenient. Convenience is an important thing when you're trying to run a kennel because, if I have to go and work them out, each single one, I work some of them out and other ones work themselves out. But if I have to work every single dog out for 30 minutes, it starts to become hours. So that's super good for the dog. It's convenient to me. And then other things about temperament is there's a drive to want to play on the swing and play tug, but there's also the prey drive. And I've seen there's different levels of prey drives within my dogs. There's the prey drive where they want to, like the female I mentioned, where she knows she's not supposed to go after the chickens or chase them, but she might if I step away. And then there's the ones that don't even care about the chickens. They'll let the chickens eat out of their food bowl while they're laying in the other end of the kennel. And then there's just different, if you get them used to it, you can get them to not just want to chase cats. Dogs that grow up in household with cats, they're usually fine with it. 90%, 95%. You bring a puppy in the household and there's a cat there, the dog won't care. Kind of just like the chickens. But I have noticed also, like if you introduce a dog to a cat or some chickens in your yard, for the first 8 months everything is fine. But if you take away the cat for 8 months and then you bring it back, you might have some issues. And I only have the chickens in the yard for spring, summer, and part of fall. And then when they become adults, I I put them back in because they're going to start producing eggs. And then the next season I get more. Well, there's been times where my went into heat and I put her away so she's not loose all the time, gets bred, goes into a whelping area, comes back out, misses the season where there's chickens, and then by the next season when there's chickens, it's almost like she forgot who they were or what they were and how she's supposed to behave. So with temperament, there's some things like that, different levels of prey drive, and then how strong their nerves are. Some of my dogs, you keep my dog, you get a dog from me and you keep it at home. You live maybe at the edge of town or something, and then you put a leash on it for the first time and you take it through downtown at a year old. You really have to be on edge. You have to make sure you're watching your dog to see what it does. You have to get it used to certain things. These dogs, you can't just you can definitely not take them to a dog park for the first time in their lives at like a year old. It's not going to work. It's going to be pretty bad. If you can do it and your dog behaves, maybe there's one or two other females and you keep them on a leash at the dog park, I'd say you got a really good temperament. Or maybe some same sex dogs, you keep them on a leash. The dog has a really good temperament, but it's not something you want to expose to new things like right away without being prepared. I mean, you can definitely do it. If you live on a farm and then you move into the middle of town and you want to get your dog used to people, you have to start doing it slowly. It's not something like, you let your 13-year-old daughter take the dog on a walk for the first time, by herself. It's something you really got to get prepared. Not a doggy daycare type of dog either. Now, if you start doing stuff early before 8 months, 9 months old, you shouldn't have a problem. And so me saying all that, I'm kind of breeding towards the middle of the road. I like the temperaments where a dog that's maybe 4 months old, I could take it down by my work. I work across the boardwalk. I could take it to the boardwalk and have dogs come maybe, 20 feet from us, and the dog doesn't freak out. It just looks, becomes interested, and then I correct my dog and we keep walking straight. That's kind of the temperament I want. I don't want the dog to freak out too much because it saw other dogs. Slowly, maybe a stranger wants to pet my dog and the dog isn't afraid of the stranger. So that's kind of what I'm going for. That's what I want to keep in my breeding dogs. So I can maintain that, because I want these dogs to be easy for people who buy puppies, but they're also American Bulldogs, and they're going to be aloof to strangers, and there's usually going to be some same-sex aggression, maybe 65 to 75% of the time with adults over 2 years old for sure. Sometimes adults under 2, but it's not as common when they get older. I have a female. I bought her as an adult, maybe a year and a half old. About a year and a half old, yeah, because she was bred once by the other family on her second heat. And I went to look at the puppies because I was going to buy a puppy, but I ended up buying her instead. And I brought her, slowly introduced her to my dogs, then put them in the yard next to the other dogs. And then before work, I would get up, let all the dogs loose. And, I'd have 9 dogs loose at the same time. It wasn't an issue. And then I went ahead, bred that dog I had bought. And she was pregnant, and then had an issue with another female, same-sex aggression female. And it caused problems. Those 2 dogs were never able to be kept together again. And then time went on. Then it was issues with younger females, and now she just became a little harder to handle with other dogs. She doesn't put up with a lot of stuff from dogs that are over about 10 months old. She loves the puppies. She'll hang out with the puppies. She's good with my kids, but I don't let her out with all the other dogs because I do have a lot of young females right now, under 2 years old, and that's something you gotta keep an eye on. Also with the temperament, you gotta really know your dogs, especially if you're going hiking or doing off leash stuff. That's a dog I wouldn't just take to the vet. Just through the front door without a muzzle either. You just never know. Other people could have their dogs right there on long leashes. So, and that's some of the things I'm going for temperament. There's a lot of changes I've seen in the breed, and there's popularity stuff. Dogs that are a little shorter in the back and smaller. This breed is supposed to be large, and they're supposed to be a little longer than they are tall. And I'm cool with some dogs being shorter in the back, as long as the proportions are still somewhat similar. But you get a lot of throwbacks. So if you want to buy a dog that's a little smaller and shorter in the back, some of the offspring might be more like the original Johnson dogs, and vice versa. So that goes back to the pedigrees and looking at the dogs in front of you and looking at the whole genetic gene pool by looking at whatever you can find as far as the siblings to the parents. And these dogs have been changed a lot since John D. Johnson had them in his yard. And I say that mostly because I'm on the bully type of the standard. I know there's some standard blood in the classic American Bulldogs right now, but it's not the majority. So when you get a dog and you breed it, you have to really take that kind of thing into consideration, because you're not always going to get the even spread of dogs. There's going to be little variances and variety in your pups. So that's important to find too. Some of these dogs have really gone down in size, and they look super cool. And when you go to get something like that, you could get an offspring that's not small. It's average size. So that's also really important. My ultimate goal over the next 5 years is fix some of these flaws that I'm working on. And I know they're still going to be in the gene pool, because if I recently got rid of them, they still pop up. So to keep track of all that, get those flaws. So I'm wanting to be able to consistently produce males that are about 24 inches tall, 115 pounds. That's not the biggest. That's not the heaviest. You have a lot of 24, 25-inch males at 130, but that's not necessarily what I want. To be honest, that's a little harder to achieve. For the next 5 years, I'm keeping it a little more realistic. So 24 inches, about 115, 112 pounds is fine. A bully head, square, with a nice vertical stop, a short muzzle. I want them to be clean breathers and have a wide shoulder set with straight front legs and strong pasterns, tight, straight feet. Minimal to no roach, with a temperament where a family can handle the dog, where they're not afraid, like, oh, the dog's off leash at the campsite. If the dog sees something strange or sees another dog, it might bark first, but it's not going to go head first either. So that's a temperament. A strange dog comes onto the campsite, the dog's going to bark. The owner has enough time to maybe tell the dog it's okay, or put a leash on it, put it away, and then everything is fine. A dog that looks to its owner to do things also. I like strong, smart dogs, but not super independent either. I want them to be muscular, tight skin, and after I get all that, a good bite. I want them to keep all their teeth in their head, to adulthood. Sometimes there's some American Bulldogs in the bully side of the standard where they're 3 years old and you open up the mouth and they're missing some teeth. I've seen to the point, if you ever see a dog with its tongue sticking out of its mouth, it's because it's missing some teeth in that part of its jaw. Mm-hmm. So that's why the tongue sticks out. So that it looks really bad to me. It really bothers me a lot. Mm-hmm. So teeth are super important. After that, I'll start getting a little more picky with the ears. I want the ears to be a medium prick off to the side. I don't like the ears that flop down. I have another dog who has ears that look like they're about to stand up, and about 60% of the way up the ear they fold over. They look a little silly, but the dog is really nice overall. And then color. I like color. I'm not gonna lie. I have lowrider cars with candy paint jobs, so I'm not building sleepers. I like the cars to look good. I like my dogs to have a cool paint job on them too. I like solid colors. I like with white chests and whites on their paws, maybe on the tip of their tails, maybe the middle of their heads too. I like solid tan, solid black, solid chocolate. I've never had a blue dog yet. I like blue too. It looks cool. I'm not sure if I like it a lot because I don't have one and I want one, or I really do like it. I like reverse brindle color dogs. I don't like the average, the most brindle dogs. I do like mostly white dogs too, and I know that together it's genetically it doesn't go, because if you want a full dog, and these dogs are mostly white right now, which is what they'd call in other breeds extreme pied, or pied with low color. You're not going to go either way. You're going to have a medium. So it's just what I like, and I haven't really decided yet. Hey, I'm gonna start breeding dogs this color because that's what I like yet. Because I'm not quite there. Because my dogs aren't good enough to just breed solid bodysuit dogs with the genetics I have right now. If I need to bring in genetics from an all white dog or all brindle dog, then I'm gonna have to do that, because I'm not quite to the finishing touch area. Mm-hmm. I've just started to get into what I want as far as size, the way they look, structure, minimal flaws, and the temperaments. I have most of the temperament there. I still do have to pet home some dogs when they can't be around other dogs. I've had to do that too. I've never had to put down a dog for bad temperament. I've never had a person, a family who bought my dog say, hey, the temperament's bad, it's not going to work out. I haven't had that, and I've been very lucky to start with that, with good temperaments. So I'm working on all the other stuff. Also, at the end of all this, what I want is dogs that aren't too delicate as far as food or weather. Now, it's pretty mild with the weather where I'm at, but people who have gotten dogs where I've gotten dogs, they go to the hot areas, like in the south, where the dog doesn't do too good outside in the summer. Not for breathing issues, but for skin issues. And I don't think it's diet, because that particular dog got fed well, and they've tried a couple other things. But I want to be able to send my dogs anywhere in the country in the weather that's within reason. The dog can do good. I don't want the dog to get into the trash and all of a sudden it's got a bunch of rash because it ate, chicken, have the dog be allergic to chicken or something. So I'm working on that. Right now I do have one dog that's a little more delicate, and another dog that I switched the food, and it didn't go too great. They got blisters in between their toes from the food when I switched it. So that's also something I wanna keep an eye on for like the final product. I just want a nice sturdy dog, like no issues, nothing like that. Good temperament, a great pet for a family, just the all around dog where, it's time to go. The dog gets in the truck. There's no issues, no behavioral issues. And I want it to look good. And if somebody wants to do any sporting with it, it still has the ability to do some bite work and things like that. I do have some dogs right now where I feel like they have the temperament to do some bite work, and I could do some bite work with them. And maybe I am looking into it, maybe I'm not. I heard someone say that, hey, if you do bite work and you upload videos, if your dog ever bites anyone, they're going to look at those videos and say, hey, you trained your dog to bite, so you're in more trouble now. So that's something I haven't looked into. I just listened to it and it stayed in the back of my mind. I'm not an attorney. I probably won't get an attorney to ask him that question either. But it's just something I consider because I'm super careful, and I always think of like what the worst case scenarios. So.
Well, you're a business owner, so you get it,
Yeah, I'm a business owner, and these last 2 summers, maybe the summer 18 before COVID, or 19 up until now, there's a lot of fake service dogs, like a lot of emotional support, and I try to be, I want my customers' money, but I don't want a bunch of unnecessary dogs inside of my business. And I love dogs. I have the last booth in my restaurant with a couple dog books, the Dog Encyclopedia, The World of Fighting Dogs by Mr. Carl, and then I have the American Bulldog by John Blackwell sitting there. They're just sitting there, and I'm just hoping someone's going to strike up conversation from those books, because when I'm not talking about dogs, I'm hoping someone brings them up. And but no, there's a lot of fake service dogs, a lot of emotional support dogs. There was 2 emotional support dogs that almost got into a fight at the mall here, but luckily they were both on leashes. Like they went after each other. It looked like they were definitely gonna bite or something. I don't know. Maybe because they were on leashes and far enough away from each other, like 20 feet. They knew. If you ever seen those videos when they open up the gates and the dogs stop barking at each other?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's just I try to do everything carefully. I learned the laws as far as in the restaurant side of things, because you never want to be wrong with the service animal either. Those are important and they have their place. I like to build custom cars. I like the dogs. I'm a person of many hobbies and passions, but when I have the dogs and I'm at work, I can kind of tune out when it's necessary, when I can tune out the stress of work and think about dogs, think about breedings. I can pick up my phone and just go on the dog groups and look, and it calms me. Maybe after I had a customer complaint, maybe after one of my vendors did something I didn't like, or I made a mistake. I make mistakes, and it kind of bothers me when I make a mistake. And, it's, well, too bad you made a mistake. Now you lose, throughout the day looking at dogs and thinking about dogs. It helps me a lot too. I'm not as such on edge or such an angry person anymore.
Especially the restaurant business this last couple of years has been probably kind of stressful.
Yeah, it has. But, I got into it, and I'm taking it. I have an exit strategy. It's not something I'm going to do till I'm 68 or 72 or whatever. There's an exit strategy, and then do something else I like, and keep doing the dogs. I'm just gonna breed dogs until I'm tired of getting hit at the knees. Maybe when I'm 70, I won't be able to be hit in the knees by a 100-pound dog anymore.
Yeah, right.
Because these puppy-like dogs, when they're a year old, they'll do that. They'll get excited, get the zoomies, and knock over your chair or other small furniture in the house, or hit you in the knees, or carrying cleaning water buckets, and I'm taking a full water bucket, 5 gallons, and they just hit me, and then I'm all wet. It's they're fun dogs, and I don't know. I don't think I could have another breed. Maybe I could. Maybe something similar. Maybe like an oldie or something I could, but they're very similar. They're bulldogs too, so. I like where they share a great-grandparent or a grandparent. So, yeah, it's an outcross, but they still got a little bit of the same blood back there. I ask questions about temperament. I see if they have children, if it's a house dog. Some people don't have a huge kennel where they got 10, 20 dogs. Some people got 2, 3 dogs and they're inside the house. If they take them out places, it answers a lot of questions about temperament. If they're able to do that, that's good. And then the way they look, all the dogs have to have the same type, the same head type, the same phenotype. They have to look similar. If I'm going for size, I'm not going to pick a dog that has loose skin, different looking face, almost look like it's a different breeder out of the different side of the standard. Same with if I want a tight skinned dog, I'm not going to go straight to a Scott dog and do a hybrid breeding. I'm going to get too much variation. So I'm going to go for a dog that shares a lot of phenotypical traits that look similar, but better, of course. I don't want the variety in the litter. I want them to look the same. Mm-hmm. And then I have to be able to get good pictures too. If I feel like I can't get good enough pictures where I could see the conformation of the dog, it's very hard for me to just do it. So I have to get good pictures or see the dog in person, of course. And then after that, I would go ahead and do it. Do the breeding. Of course, also, like I said, look at the pedigree. Make sure the dog looks like the pedigree and the pedigree looks like the dog. The same with its litter mates. And then after that, I'll do an outcross. I'll keep a pup probably at my house, and then one with a cousin or an uncle or something like that. And there I pick, and then it goes back into my breeding program, probably for a line breeding. I'm going to slow down a little more and do less breedings, and probably not do a breeding until my last breeding has been at least a year old. That way I can keep more. Because, for example, if I do 2 breedings in 1 year, I'm going to keep a pup out of each litter. And if I do 1 breeding, I don't know, every 13, 14 months, I can keep two pups out of that litter. And then pick my keeper at, I pick my keeper when they're pups, and then I'll pick another keeper that's going to go into the breeding program at a year old. And then if I pet home or sell the other dog that didn't make the cut, maybe they both make the cut and they're both good, but I don't want to keep 2 of them. And then I can go ahead and do my next breeding, and then it's easier. That way I don't keep too many dogs. I just take things a little slower, and it'll be easier for me that way. It is tough to find the right people. I feel like, no, this isn't for everyone. I don't want people doing what I do, because I'm Mexican. I have a big family, and it works for me. It probably won't work. It's just a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. I could give a dog to my uncles, my cousins, and it's all trust. It's all good. If they don't take great care of the dog, or if something happens, they're like, hey, the dog, I go back. I take the dog. And no matter what, I'm not going to get mad in my family over a dog, if I show up unannounced and, the dog is in a cage, or the dog is with a friend, or they gave the dog away, I'm going to be like, hey, you got to give that dog to me first. Like, I gave you that dog. Don't give the dog away. Something, I'm not going to get mad over a dog. It makes it easier because I know I can't, it's family. Like, it just doesn't, it's not going to happen. Now, if you give the dog to someone you met and you don't know very well, maybe you've known of them for a year or two, and then you start talking to them for 6 months. I get this thing anyways where I'm like, is this person ripping me off? Or like, am I going to let this, like, do they think I'm stupid? Do I look stupid? It kind of makes you mad, and then you better do contracts that way. But yes, co-owns are very important. They're strategic, and it helps me from just giving dogs away. Like, they grow up in my house, and then I got to find a home for them. There's another chance that person I place a dog with might put it in another home, and then it's 3 homes for one dog. That's not ideal. So if I just place it in the home, hopefully, likely, because I pick who I go with, not just my family, maybe people in church, people I know, friends of my parents. It'll stay there. So that's important. I do have some friends I have in mind that I would give them a dog. It's just, honestly, to have a good kennel, if you have 30 dogs to pick from, you're going to be doing great. Now, if you got 30 dogs at your house, that's tough. That is a lot of work. So we can't all do that. I definitely can't do that. I've had up to like 9 and a pup. And that was just way too hard. 6 is the sweet spot, honestly. I got 6 here and then 6 or 7 out with people. It's much easier. It's better for the dogs. I can give them more one-on-one time and be more in tune with what's going on. It's easier to miss stuff if you have more dogs. As far as health, you might miss their heats. You might think that the cycle started and 2 days off because you're not paying enough attention to your dogs. So I manage. It's just better to manage. And then when you have more dogs to pick from, you have more chances of having those super stock, that superstar, the ace dog. It's like, like that high school sports. The small schools don't compete against the big schools because the big schools have more athletes to choose from. They have more superstars compared to the small schools. So that's how I look at it. So it's very important. It's definitely a balance and a juggling act. And just because you co-own them doesn't mean, you're not responsible anymore. Like, you got to be there for backup. The last thing you want is, your dogs to get loose or go away or end up in shelters. And then, you get 2 of your dogs in the shelter and then you start to look bad. So yes, it's very important. So I have some dogs that are dual registered, but I mostly go through the NKC because of the color. They accept the colors. And just the other day I made a post on Instagram where I was reading the faults in the color, and there was a part that I didn't, I looked over. What was it? I actually have it in front of me. So it says serious fault, tricolor pattern, and it says disqualification, solid blue in Johnson bully type. So it almost made it sound like solid blue was worse than a tricolor, but my opinion is a little different for that as far as the color of the standard. The rest of the standard, it sounds pretty normal. I like. I also the other registry I register with is the ABRA. I like that registry. They're a little more strict. a little more strict on color. I do have dogs of color, so it's not my first choice. I remember some years ago where they stopped registering dogs with docked tails. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, well that's cool, maybe they're not doing that because they're afraid that the spine, the tail's an extension of the spine, there's something wrong with the vertebrae or something. But changes happen abruptly in that registry. It's a fine registry. The people who run it are good people and everything. The NKC is a little bit bigger, but that's the one I mostly use. So if you get a dog from me, it's going to be registered NKC. My stud dog is registered both, just to make it easier for the public. I have started studying out Peso, one of my good dogs, my best dog. 2 other programs. The shipping semen is a little tricky. It's been strange. I ship semen one day, and they go to the vet, and it looks great under the microscope. And the second day, it's at like 40%, where I did everything the same. And I don't know. So we're getting that done. I'm having help from a vet, so everything is a little more sure. But there's always guarantees. I don't want people to lose out on their programs, because breeding dogs is very expensive, and losses happen a lot. So my advice is take it slow, learn the dogs, learn the pedigrees. When you buy a dog, make sure it's the style of dog or the dog you really like, that you're not going to change your mind. Do some research before you buy your first dog. Don't just, buy a couple adult females and want to get breeding right away. I mean, some people are going to do that, but take it slow as far as keeping your productions. Like I said, maybe keep a couple pups from your litter and see how they turn out before you do another breeding, just so you know what to expect. Mm-hmm. And you're going to make mistakes. I've been in it 10 years, and I'm still making a few mistakes and still learning. But also don't be too quick to throw your money out, because this is the dog breeding business. Oh, people are going to hate me for saying this, but the dog breeding business in some way is similar to investment real estate, where you got the big investors with all this stuff selling their crap investments or their rundown houses that there's really no money to be made on to the new investors. It's hard to find deals. So a lot of times it's new breeders paying top dollar to the big breeders, and not pet breeders, and not breeders who have been doing it a long time. Mm-hmm. So just don't be too quick to throw your money out to someone. And when you do spend your money, make sure that dog has everything that you want as far as your criteria when you set that. Because you can produce any dog in time. So if you think it's going to take you a couple generations to produce a dog like this or like that, and that dog's already there, the dog is saving you time when you buy it. Mm-hmm. So make sure all the criteria for a dog is there. Don't just buy the dog because it's local and it's close to you and you saw the litter. Don't just buy the dog because it's cheap, or because they said, hey, just take this dog and give me, X amount of money and some pups back. Don't just allow any kind of genetics within dogs in your home if it's going to be a breeding dog instead of a pet dog, because it might set you back. It might set you sideways in a different direction you wanted to go. So that's the main thing right there. Yeah, it's very important. Like, pet homing dogs is like the biggest part, and I didn't even know this for the first couple years. The first 4 years of me breeding, I didn't realize how big of a part pet homing dogs is.
Yeah.
Because if you don't pet home your dogs, you're going to have a bunch of 5-year-old females that are retired.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't make progress that fast if you have pet dogs, where you could have breeding dogs in its place. I have a pet dog. She used to be my breeding dog. She's like 5 years old now. Her temperament's great for the family and great for the farm. Not as great with other females, but she's my pet, and she's going to live the rest of her life here. She lived with another family previously, so I don't want to put her in a third home, But for the other dogs, I have dogs where I haven't even bred them yet because they're young. And I'm thinking about, am I going to breed her once, wait for her productions to be 1.5 years old, and then decide if I'm going to pet home her or breed her again. I'm already thinking about pet homing, and I haven't even bred this dog.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that needs to be in the back of your mind. You could definitely breed and not pet home. You could breed and sell all the puppies, and you're just breeding your pets. But, if they're in the house, you're going to have 3 top, 3 max. And then after about, 5-6 years, you're not going to overbreed them. You're not going to breed the female 7-8 times. Like, that's it. You're done until your dogs die, and then maybe you get new dogs, and then you breed those. So it just depends what kind of breeder you want to be. I'm very set in goals. I take my chicken program, breeding, very seriously. I love breeding chickens because I don't have to pet home those. I can make caldo de pollo. They're delicious. I just eat them if I want to cull them, as long as they're healthy. And I can, hatch 50 at a time or 100 a season if I wanted to. So that's easy. It moves faster. And with dogs, they're not birds, they're not fish, they're not insects. They're more sentient to me. So it takes a little more time to take that into account, and it's a big part. It's a really big part. People might say, "Hey, I'm not gonna breed tons of dogs. These are also my pets," and that's like, that's good too, as long as you know what you want, and your spouse or your significant other also knows you guys are on the same page, because it makes a difference. My wife helped me a lot. There's been times where I leave on vacation to Mexico, and I left her with my daughter and a female that whelped 3 hours after I left to the airport. And that was cool. These days, she does not want to be that involved. These days, I got more kids, another one on the way. So she's more doing that, because that's a lot of work too. I'm more on the dog side of things, and my dad helps me a lot more now. And it works, but with spouses, the level of success you have with breeding dogs has a lot to do with them. If they're on the same page, sacrificing vacations and your money to do these breedings, breeding could cost you thousands of dollars, from vet to paying an outside stud fee to all the little things that go into it. Just maintaining my whelping room is expensive. It costs hundreds of dollars every year. If I have 1 or 2 litters, like just the cleaning, the replacing things. I had drywall. I had to replace some of the drywall. I had to put like the plastic vinyl sheeting that's like 4x8 to make it better. I had to replace the door once just because it got too beat up. No bare wood. Everything has to, I made mistakes, and I put materials on there that didn't last. And then just buying puppy pee pads are expensive, for whelping dogs and raising litters. It costs, I probably spent a couple thousand in 2 years. Or 3 years, yeah, a couple thousand in like 3 years to just maintain everything when I have puppies. So it's important that your spouse is cool with it. So what I have seen in person and online, I'm not gonna lie, dog breeding is taking place online these days. Like, the internet has helped me find most of other breeders, made friends on there, found cool dogs, and so it takes place, a lot of it online. A lot of people say, oh, the internet has ruined the breed. I mean, sure, the internet has helped people hide. You see their online presence, but you don't know that, maybe their water buckets are green and their dogs are in bad shape. They don't get taken out much. You don't see that, so you got to watch out for that too. But the internet has helped a lot. Like, I feel like the internet has helped me because I've found great dogs. I found great tips, a lot of information. I mean, just your platform has helped me a lot, listening to other breeds and getting interested in other breeders from other breeds and learning from them too. So there's that. As far as fads, I see American Bulldogs getting smaller and bullier, maybe a little closer to an oldie. And I think that's due to it's easier to make a dog look more bully and more impressive in a smaller package than in a bigger package. Like a 26-inch dog is hard to look bully from the shoulder set. Mm-hmm. Like, it's hard for a big dog to have wide shoulders. It can happen. I've seen a few, but it's not as common. Also, I've heard some breeders who have been in this 20 plus years say stuff like, the bigger the dog, the more chances you have of having hip issues. So maybe it's because of that. If you have a 90-pound male, you have less chance of having hip issues than if you have a 140-pound male. So sizes have gone smaller, and we're definitely seeing colors now. Before it was the black American Bulldog, and when I first started, it wasn't as accepted. Now it's accepted. I feel like that is because you get new breeders coming in every day. If you've been in the breed for 4 or 5 years, you've been seeing black bulldogs and blue bulldogs and chocolate bulldogs. And if you've been in it 25 years, it's not, it's something you've seen in the last 9, 8, 10 years. Also, the pet industry side of things, a lot of people say this and a lot of people say, no, it's not true, you just don't know, is dogs prices have gone down, that the pet market is a little more saturated because of COVID. Everyone bought a puppy and maybe people had their first litter. I think it's probably right. There are a lot of pets for sale. In my area, I see $600 Huskies, $800 German Shepherds. And for my pet market, it's a lot of people who had an American Bulldog when they were teenagers, and now they're in their late 30s, early 40s, and they want another one because they remember they had one. And maybe the one back then wasn't as bully, as finely bred, or a little more standard than what they see now, but they go with this style of dog like the ones I have. Also, some people, they're looking for a cool dog. They say, oh, look, an American Bulldog, but we got this lower price other breed. So they go for that breed instead. I have had one person who acted like they were super interested, said all the right things, and I'm like, all right, this is going to be a great family. And then they contact me. They're like, hey, we found a Pomeranian instead. I'm like, what? You were shopping for an American Bulldog and now you found a Pomeranian. Like, if they found a Pit Bull Terrier or if they found an Alapaha or Oldie, like, that's a little closer, in the same style of dog, but they went completely different, So I that's one thing. Just dogs are cheaper. There's more for sale. And also, I feel like shows have gone down. I've only been to a couple of dog shows to observe. And I'm hearing the presence for dog shows has gone down, especially for American Bulldogs. I remember when I first started, my buddies up north in Portland and in Washington, they would get together and go to dog shows. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm missing out. and now they don't even show up anymore. So I don't think they're completely recognized now. I think they're letting in I'm not exactly sure what they call it, but it's like the foundation stock. So they open up a parent club, and then those dogs that they start with will be like the first stock recognized, and then the dogs that come off of that will be AKC. So if the dogs get completely AKC recognized and they get registered, I don't think I can just bring mine in all of a sudden, especially with the variance of breed type. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out. It could be that they say, oh, that's the bully type dog, and that's the AKC type dog. Like the AKC only runs standard type dog. I'm not sure. I don't recall there being any type of dog where the AKC has two standards. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I like it. I mean, hopefully it's to a point where they call the AKC American Bulldog the working bulldog, where it retains what it's originally supposed to be. Because these dogs are badass. Like, what they're originally supposed to be is awesome. And sometimes I think if I lived where we had wild hogs, I would do that. I would hunt them. I'd have a different style of dog for sure, but I would do it. I would hunt hogs and just go with performance dogs. I don't have that here. I live a different lifestyle. I do live on a small farm, but I also run a restaurant, so it's a little harder. We have a lot of hunting and fishing here, and I don't get to do as much of that as I used to. No, because of the way I've incorporated color. So the first time I incorporated color, did a color breeding, I had my female, Wild Diamond, who I owned her niece, I owned her half-sister. So I owned the half-sister, and that was one of my brood females, and then I owned her daughter, and then another niece. Like, I was very familiar with that blood. It came from JC picking American Bulldog DDP. So I had my brood female standard color, and then in concurrent, another friend of mine owned my female's litter mate, and then my friend did a colored breeding with using his standard colored female to a colored dog, and then I bought something off of that litter. So it was pretty much I'm going to call it half my blood and a different blood, and then I took my dogs back to it. So speaking in terms, even though it's a colored bulldog, it's 75% my genetics, and call it like an outcross to a colored dog, where the colored dog is a grandparent, and I have my blood on both sides of that dog, and then I bred it and then kept more stuff off of that. I intentionally did embark DNA tests so I could see, because it was a black bulldog from another kennel, and it carried one copy of blue, one copy of chocolate. So it wasn't expressing, and it wasn't chocolate or blue, but it had those colors, and it carried one copy of its genetics. I did the embark test, and I said, oh, look, this dog has this copy, 25% chance it would get it. I looked at the dog. There was another dog with the same genetics, but that dog had an umbilical hernia, so I didn't keep that one. I kept the dog with the genetics I wanted that didn't have the umbilical hernia. I picked her at 5 weeks old, and ended up getting that dog, kept that dog, and now that's how I put chocolate colored into my program, which was a little more complicated. It took more breedings to do. But so, for example, my colored dogs I have right now, they have my genetics from JC, or from the genetics I had 6 years ago, years before I incorporated the color, on both sides of their pedigree. So I did that intentionally just so I could say, hey, they got more of my blood, and they look more like my dogs, act like more of my dogs, but still have the color. With that, I feel like there's certain people doing that. There's certain people being vocal, certain people that won't breed to that. Me personally, if I can embark and it doesn't say 100% Bulldog, let me go back. Okay, so let's say we have German Shepherd outcross. Mm-hmm. Let's do that, so we're not talking about a couple of scenarios that say they happen. We have a German Shepherd outcross, and we believe it's a 25% German Shepherd. I probably won't use it, but if it's an outstanding dog, and I'm like, wow, I really like that dog. You know what? Other people have used it, and they've had success. Let's embark it, and I'll use it. If they embark it, and it comes back with some German Shepherd, then I'm not going to use it. Now, some dogs do get embarked, and they say like 10% or 5% super mutt, or they don't know, like there's no genetic marker for it. That's something different. So an outcross dog or a rumor of outcross dog, I'll most likely stay away from it. But if it has everything and I have an opportunity to use it, I'm not saying I won't use it, but I'm not completely against it, but most likely I won't. There's just too much stuff out there that I could use. I have outside studs from other kennels where I paid a deposit, and I don't think I'll use them this year or next. Like there's just a lot of choice. So for me to use it, there's that. Now with the whole outcross thing and sneaking other breeds into our breed, like it has happened. It's been happening. If a dog DNA is 100% American Bulldog, and that's what we're just going to talk about is DNA tests, because that's what we have to go off of for sure. It's not 100% sure, but it's like the only thing we can really say. If it DNAs and for sure there's an outcross in it, the genes either got diluted, they didn't get picked up, or those genes from another breed were in there already when the DNA companies picked dogs to choose their genetic markers. Like a Dog de Bordeaux genetic could be inside our American Bulldog, but when Embark or Wisdom Panel or whatever got all their data, they took that Dog de Bordeaux gene with them and counted as an American Bulldog. And the thing with all the pit bull outcrosses, maybe even Rottweiler outcrosses, all those outcrosses that got put in, maybe in the 80s, let's just say the 80s and 90s, they got put in, but there's no big proof of it because they didn't leave tan points or it didn't leave a color or something super recognizable. With black color or dilutes or whatever, people say, oh, if it's such and such color, it's a cross, it's a mutt. Well, there's other dogs from other breeds that are also brindle and white, but you just can't see because it's the same, So it's just because the genes expressed from an outcross show up, they say it, but there's been outcrosses and just crosses done and lies done and papers hung. So you just have to look at the dog and make sure the dog is what it's supposed to be. The person you're dealing with is reliable and honest, and then breed the dog, and if it breeds true, that's the best you can do. That's the one thing we can go to is doing that, and that's how you would do it anyways, even if you're not worried of an outcross, because just the breed has such a wide standard. And instead of an outcross or a cross or some trait from a different color, it could just be some disease or some temperament issue. I was on Sports Mix, and that's not really too great It's not what it used to be. I got away from it for a while, and I came right back to it, and I'm like, nah. And I had fed before Purina Pro Plan 30-20. And the reason I stopped feeding it is I could not find it anywhere. I called places that sold dog food 2 hours up the coast and all the way down to the California border, and I was willing to drive hours. And when it got really hard, I'm like, no, I can't just find it and then not have it again and then find it. So I switched to Sport Mix. But right now I'm feeding Purina Pro Plan 30-20. It's high protein. And then for the pups and moms, pregnant moms and nursing moms, I'm doing Diamond puppy food. And that is what has worked best for me for a while. That's what I'm feeding. I used to incorporate a little bit of raw, but it's a convenience thing. When I do it, it's more like a treat for them. And I haven't had any issues feeding those two dog foods that I just mentioned last. So I heard this quote, and I can't remember which dog YouTube video I heard it from, but I heard it yesterday. They're like, if you fed a wolf Old Roy, I bet you half its fur would fall off. It was something to that. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, well, okay. Wolf are the tough, what our dogs came from, but try giving the